everyone. I'm Sophia, and this is Skylar.
I'm Skylar.
And today we're going to be continuing the student study series, and we're going to be teaching you guys how to take proper textbook notes. Also answer the poll below about which textbook you use the most in your class. So yeah. As usual, follow Think Fiveable on all of our social media, on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube. Yeah. Oh wait, no, I'm so sorry. No, you can get it.
No, it's fine. Yeah, so just try and follow the social media. They have some great content on Instagram. I found them through YouTube. The YouTube channel is really helpful for explaining things. It's almost like Crash Course. And their Twitter account sends out reminders of when there's different streams and stuff. So you should check that out.
I think I also discovered them on YouTube. They have really good videos, especially on world history. So that should say tonight there's going to be CCOT within belief systems from the period 1450 to 1750 with Jed at I think that should say 10 p.m. Eastern if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, I think it's 10 p.m. Eastern. Yeah. And then on November 5th, doing the DBQ, the evidence portion with Caroline at 8 p.m. Eastern. And then on November 6th, we have an SAQ scoring review with the one and only Eric Beckman at 8 p.m. Eastern. Or 9 p.m. Eastern. So you should check all of those out. So, yeah. So in this stream, basically, we're just going to go over the basics of note-taking.
I think you may have, can you hear me?
Yeah, but I can't see you. Are we all good? Or I think you turned your mic off. Okay, I'm just gonna go over this real quick. So in this stream, we're gonna talk about why you should take notes. We're gonna have a bunch of note-taking tips for you, like what kind of notes to take, all the different types, all of that, tips and tricks. And then we're gonna have guided note-taking with a textbook. So I have a textbook pulled up right here, and we're just gonna go through note-taking from one of the chapters in it on a Google Doc right here. And then we're gonna have a Q&A study session. So before Skylar comes back, let me actually link the notes in the link tab. Okay. Let me. So I think the button down there should have the taking notes tab for all of you who want to follow along. So yeah, I don't know where Skylar went. Okay, she'll leave. Oh, wait, there you are. I think she's frozen right now. Here, let me kick you out and then I'll re-add you. Oh wait, no, you're here? Okay, good. Okay, so let's start. Oh wait, oh no. I accidentally kicked you out. Let me invite you back.
Okay.
That's good. Okay.
Okay, so
yeah, I think you're good now.
Why should we take notes? Well, there's a lot of that. Yeah. Okay, good. Yeah, so the first thing about notes is that they're really helpful for you to remember your information. Like especially when when you have a test coming up, it'll help you recall everything. Would you like to take the next few bullet points?
Oh yeah, okay, yeah. It helps keep you organized. You can't really retain everything in your head. So writing down notes keeps it organized in one place so you know where to go back if you're studying and all of that. So yeah. And it allows you to read more thoroughly. So usually if you're not taking notes, you're not going to want to read every single thing. You're probably going to skim through everything and not really get much of the important information. But if you're taking notes, you're going to want to read everything carefully and you're going to pick out the important details. So you're more likely to read more instead of just like skimming over and being bored while you're taking notes. So yeah.
Yeah, like for me especially, my grades like they go up a bit when I take notes. Also, you feel more focused on the subject, so you can you understand it more, and you're not as distracted with other things.
Mhm.
Oh yeah, and it allows for you to have some creativity in what you write, which is kind of neat because yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, you can do your notes however you want. Not everyone takes notes the same way, so you can be creative, you can use colors, you can go all out. So it's up to you how you personalize your own notes, but it's whatever helps you remember best. Okay, so for tips and tricks, the first one is only write down the most important facts. I know for a fact that I struggle the most with this. I like to copy like every single sentence because I'm like, oh, this is important, all of this is important, but not everything's going to be important. It takes up a lot of time if you try and write down every single thing. So you think in your head, you pick what you think is the most important and only write that down.
Like I go by the copy it down if it's bold rule. So if it's italicized, if it's bolded, then that's the important information there.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also
Yeah,
really helpful to find like a note-taking method that's
you
good
can
for
go.
you. So like maybe you're a visual learner, but if you're writing the simple outline, it's not going to be as helpful for you.
Mhm. Use abbreviations, useful in class. So yes, in class, your teacher is most likely lecturing, and they're probably saying a lot of the stuff fast, and you don't have a lot of time to copy everything. So just make sure to use abbreviations that you understand. It'll help you jot down more of the notes, and you won't miss a lot of the information that your teacher says. So yeah. Can I do the next one?
Yeah, sure. So it's really helpful that you keep your notes organized because it's going to be difficult to read if it's
Mm-hmm.
like for my U.S. history class this year, all of our quizzes are open notes. So if you have like really messy notes, you're never going to be able to find the info. But it's also just helpful for the sake of studying. It's so much easier to find something if you know exactly where it is.
Mm-hmm. Make flashcards for your vocab words. This is a really useful thing to do, especially when you're studying for a test. You might want to go back to your notes and probably pick out all the vocab words and then study based off of flashcards. Maybe you can do a Quizlet or maybe you can do like actual note cards, and this will help you remember the words more because you're rewriting what the word means and you're studying off of that. So it'll just help retain that information in your memory longer. And review your notes whenever you have time. This is very important because world history, there's a lot of content and it's obviously hard to remember every single thing. So just whenever you have time, just open up your notes, look at maybe what you learned yesterday before coming into class, just so you remember the information and you're not forgetting things as easily.
And it's really helpful for you to like create this schedule. So you want to have like a set AP world time. Like for me, that was always like on the bus on the way to school because I have a long bus ride. So I would just take that time and that was my studying time. And the last thing is just to take notes on a review book. And this is really helpful if you struggle with the first point. That's don't only write down the most important points because review books are they're refined information. If it's in the review book, it's important. So if you take notes on that, then you'll really have the most important of the important.
Yes. What do I take notes on? So these are basically the four major, like, I guess, themes in world history that you'll usually be tested on, maybe on like an LEQ or a DBQ, even SAQ. So it's very important to take notes on these four things. So you want to take notes on causes and effects. So for this example, it says causes for the European Middle Ages, the fall of Rome, the loss of safety, rising tensions. So you might want to have these causes here, and then in another maybe column, you'll probably just want to write like all the effects of that. And then the second one, continuity and change. This is a very big theme. I think it gets tested like quite often. So history obviously isn't going to stay the same over time. It's going to change. Some things will stay, some things will obviously change. So you want to make sure that you understand what is staying the same and what is changing. So examples, continuity of European colonization, and then an example of change would be the motives for colonization. Yeah, so gold, power, and religion.
And then another thing that you should take notes on are larger ideas. And I sort of touched on this before with the whole bold rule. But the easiest way to find these examples of larger ideas is by looking for, the bold text. And basically, these could be social, political, economic movements. Usually, there'll be a person. If there's like a picture on the side of your textbook, they're going to be important. And it's just really helpful to know these in and out. So an example of a larger idea could be feudalism, because it's like a political movement, it's a social movement, and it's an economic sort of deal all at once. And the last thing to take notes on are your historical themes. You want to know these historical themes in and out, because this is what the test is really based on. This year, I think there's 6, and I wrote them on the side. So you have humans and the environment, cultural developments and interactions, governance, economic systems, social interactions and organization, and then technology and innovation. And if you can find like 3 or 4 great examples of each of those per chapter, you're all set for the test.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Now we have types of notes. So we have Cornell notes. And as it says here, it's best for people who like organized notes that are easy to see, clear and to the point, and summary section is helpful for review. So basically in Cornell notes, you basically, I guess, you split your paper into like columns, I guess, or like you split it down the middle. And usually, I guess, how I remember taking it back in like middle school when my history teacher made us take it, we'd usually write like questions or like maybe the main idea or like a summary on like the left side, and then on the right we'd go into detail, like we'd answer the questions that were on the left side, or we just basically like write more into detail on like the big main idea that's on the left side. So it really helps keep your notes organized so you can distinguish, and like if you ever want to go back, you can just maybe look at the left column of your notes if you want just like a small review.
Like I know last year I didn't do Cornell notes just because I'm not that organized. But another helpful thing that you can do is just take like a post-it note and write your questions down on it. So that's just helpful for test review.
Yeah, I don't really, I don't know. I feel like I don't have time to do Cornell notes. Like I just do the basic simple ones. Like I'm too lazy to go all out for that. And then we have, oh, you can do it. No, you can do it. You can do it.
Okay. So the next one is the basic outline. And this is like, if you imagine notes, this is what you're picturing. My history teacher prefers that we do these, but I don't. Sorry. Sorry, Mr. Singerline. But basically, for the outline, it's best for the people who like to categorize their subjects in like this organized way. And they're really helpful because they can be written a little bit faster than the Cornell notes. And teachers prefer them, we've mentioned before. And basically what you have is a topic, and then you have the subtopics. And if that category has a subcategory, you can write it below it. So those are helpful at times.
Yeah, I think most people do the basic outline, like especially in class, like sometimes you might not have time to do like maybe a whole Cornell note section because like the lecture is going too fast and you only have time to do like the basic outline, but you can always go home and reorganize your notes however you want. So next we have the flowchart notes.
Basic outlines are always the quickest. So if you're having
I don't know if you can see the picture over here, but it's best for visual learners who like to see cause and effect. So as you can see on the picture kind of here, you have like a bunch of boxes and they probably have like some main ideas in them. And then you have like a line that leads down to maybe like a smaller idea. And then you keep having it like go down and down and down. So as you go down, you basically add your causes and effects. I don't really use this way. I'm not much of a visual learner. Results of certain events are very clear. So yeah, you could have one box and then you could draw like one line showing maybe one effect, and then you could draw like another line out from that box showing another effect. So it keeps it also, your notes also very organized, and it shows how your events are related. Do any of you do the flowchart notes? I don't think many people do these, but never know. And then,
okay. Well, like another type that we're going to talk about are mind map notes. And mind map notes are really similar to flowchart notes, except they don't usually have like the boxes. But it's best for like visual learners who want to see the clear relationships. Just because, we might have causes of World War I, and then you'll have Maine onto the side, and you'll see that those two are connected. And they're really, yeah, as you said before, they're similar to flowchart notes, but they're less detail oriented because they're really just a line with some words on it. I would say that my notes are the most similar to mind map notes. They're sort of a combination between a basic outline and mind map. And that's the beauty of notes because there's not one set way to do it. It's all about what
Exactly.
fits you as a learner.
If you guys have your own way of taking notes, drop it in the comments below. Examples of good note taking. I think one of these pictures was on this slide, but the one on the left, as you can see, it's basically just a simple basic outline. You have the main topic, and then you have the subtopic, and then you have bullet points, or not bullet points, just like letters here talking about that subtopic, and then you go on to your next topic and so on. So this is just a very organized way of taking notes. And then as you see again, the next one here is just the Cornell notes. So here on the left, you have the recall column, maybe a summary or like questions that you have. And then on the right, you have like, you go into detail on everything that's on the left. So yeah.
Okay. So for this part, I actually took some of my AP World Notes from last year, and put them onto the slideshow. So on the side, right here, we have pictures of my notes from the first chapter, and I did like this simple outline. And that's an example of more organized notes. And then on that side, we have just a mess. I decided that I wanted to learn how to do mind map notes, but I wasn't very good at it.
Oh my
So that's an
gosh.
example of some more visual notes. And my strategies evolved since then into being sort of a jumble, but an organized jumble, and that's all that matters.
Yeah, my notes look pretty similar to like this, but the outline, but it's just a messier version of that. I don't know, usually at the beginning of the year, I'm really good at taking notes, but then as the year goes on, they just get worse and worse. It's
Mm-hmm.
okay, so I think we're gonna do the demonstrating the taking notes now. So I have a Google Doc that I sent down below. If you guys can open it, if you can't, let me know. Skylar, I think I shared it with you. Did you get it or?
Oh yeah, I see it.
Yeah, so you can edit on it. So just let me know if you can't open the doc below. So yeah, do you guys have any questions before we start like showing everything, or are you guys all good? Let me just pull this up meanwhile. So let me zoom it in more. So today we're going to be going through chapter 24, which is basically the New World, the Americas, and Oceania. So I think most of you should be on this part of the course by now, but even if you aren't, it's still good to know about this or learn about this. So how do you want to take notes? Do you want to do like a basic outline or do you want to do like
Yeah, I think a
different methods?
basic outline would probably be best.
Mm-hmm. So here maybe we might want to, I guess, title this chapter. So it's chapter 24, New Worlds, the Americas, and Oceania. So maybe like, do you want to put it like in the middle or like on the side? Like right here.
We should just go with the side. It'll probably be faster, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So maybe I'll make it a bigger font. I don't know, 24 or something. Then we could just say chapter 24. And then just New Worlds. Maybe I'll lower it a bit. Maybe you can like bold it or italicize it or whatever you want to do with that. Just make sure you have it clear and distinct at the top so you know what chapter you're looking at or what topic you're looking at. So if we scroll down, here
Yeah,
we
that's
basically
really
just
important for it to
have,
be organized.
Here we basically have everything that the chapter is going to talk about. So we'll see that. And then here we just have a huge eyewitness from Donna Marina. Do you think we should take notes on this or do you think it's not as important to take notes on? Just like an
Drop your answers in
eyewitness.
the comments.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, that's fine. Generally, primary source documents are helpful, but they're not always necessary to
Mm-hmm.
your notes, especially if you're trying to work on not taking a ton of information. So
Yeah,
we could
because
probably pass by that.
yeah, I usually don't take notes on this type of stuff. It's one, two. Okay, we'll go next. It's not letting me go. Here, let me try pulling it up again. Hold up.
Sorry about that. Okay. Yeah,
Yeah,
we could look in the poll. So it seems like most of
yeah.
you use Stern's World Civilizations. I don't know that textbook. I used AMSCO when I was in AP World. I really like AMSCO. Just because it's a helpful textbook for like independent studying and just for review overall.
Okay, so I think I got it up now. So as we can see, we have like our topic, I guess, like what this section is going to be talking about. So maybe we could have, so we have our big title right here. Maybe we could have like a smaller title, I guess, underneath here, just saying like colliding worlds or something. So we could just, yeah, colliding worlds, and maybe you can just, let's unbold that. Maybe we can just like underline it or something so we know that it's the start of a new topic. So this part, I think, let me see. Yeah, this is basically just a summary of, I guess, what this section is going to be about. So if you want to take like a 1 to 2 sentence, like write 1 to 2 sentences on what this paragraph is about, it'll help you get a gist of the whole topic. So should we read this out loud or should we let them read it on their own? Okay, I'll just read it out loud then. So when European peoples first sought to establish their presence in the Americas, they brought a range of technology unavailable to the people they encountered in the Western Hemisphere. Even more important than European technology, however, were the divisions between indigenous people that Europeans were able to exploit and the effects of epidemic diseases that devastated native societies. Soon after their arrival in the Western Hemisphere, Spanish conquerors toppled the Aztec and Inca empires and imposed their own rule in Mexico and Peru. In later decades, Portuguese planters built sugar plantations on the Brazilian coastline. French, English, and Dutch migrants displaced indigenous peoples in North America and established settler colonies under the rule of European peoples. So I think this is a pretty good gist of what basically happens when the Europeans settle in America. So maybe I'll write maybe 1 to 2 sentences that describe like the effects of Europeans coming to America. So it says they brought a range of technology. And then it talks about the effects of epidemic diseases. And then it talks about Spanish conquerors and the sugar plantations and settler colonies. So maybe I'll write like a 1 sentence summary on basically all the effects of European colonization in the Americas. So maybe I'll lower this font a little, maybe to like 16, I guess. And then maybe I'll just have a bullet point saying here. So you could be like effects of European colonization of the Americas include, and then I could say like new technology, epidemic diseases, like conquering of native groups. And then if I want, I could put the Aztec and Inca. Or wait, let me see. Yeah, Aztec and Inca. And then what else was it? And then just I'll just put settler colonies.
So that right there just gives you a really good overview of what's going on in the chapter. And really, if anything, that's probably your most important really section of the notes.
Yeah.
Just wondering, do you have a link for the textbook that we could put in the chat for everyone to look at?
I do, but I don't know if they'd be able to access it because I think you need an access code to access the
Oh,
textbook.
okay.
So I don't know if I don't know if it would work. Do you think it would work, Eric, or if I just put the link in the chat, or do they need the access code? Ooh. Yeah, for the book. No, the link won't work. Okay, I think that should be fine. Hopefully. Do you want to do this part, maybe? Do you want to take over this part?
Oh, sorry. If my screen
Like the
froze for a
first.
second.
Oh, it's okay.
I'm just gonna, I think I may have found a PDF for this.
You
Oh
did?
no, okay.
Oh.
I thought I did. I did not. Okay. So now we're going to read through about the Spanish Caribbean, and we're going to start off by talking about I'm going to butcher this pronunciation. The Taino, and basically they were a major native group when Columbus landed in Hispaniola, or the Caribbean. So I'll read it out loud. The first site of interaction between European and American peoples was in the Caribbean. When Spanish mariners arrived there, the Taino, also known as the Arawaks, were the most prominent people in the region. During the late centuries BCE, the ancestors of the Taino had settled in canoes from the Orinoco River Valley in South America to the Caribbean islands, and by about 900 CE, they had settled throughout the region. The Taino cultivated manioc and other crops, and they lived in small villages under the authority of chiefs who allocated land to families and supervised community affairs. They showed interest in glass beads and metal tools that the Spanish mariners brought as trade goods and offered little initial resistance to the visitors. So basically, that was just a huge chunk of text, and we can just say it describes the Taino people. We have a brief mention of their culture in there, like their government power, and we have their interactions with the Spanish. Both those are pretty important things, but they act as like a pattern a lot of times. So we don't need to have super detailed notes, if that makes sense. So maybe for this section, we could write down Taino/Arawaks are first to interact with Spaniards. Relatively little resistance. And could we just flip back to the textbook screen one more time? Okay, cool. Thanks. Okay. And then we could say that they cultivated manioc and other crops, small villages, had agriculture, we can put it that way. Agriculture, small villages. So both of these things sort of led to the Spanish figuring, considering them to be like these lesser peoples. Okay, we can keep going.
Okay. And then here we have the Spanish arrival now. So this is an important part, obviously. So you might want to have maybe more detailed notes on this section. So Christopher Columbus and his immediate followers made the island of Hispaniola, which embraces modern Haiti and the Dominican Republic, the base of the Spanish operations in the Caribbean. There, Spanish settlers established the fort of Santo Domingo, and the city, officially founded in 1498, became the capital of the Spanish Caribbean. Columbus's original plan was to build forts and trading posts where merchants could trade with local peoples for products desired by European consumers. Within a few years of Spanish arrival, however, it became clear that the Caribbean region offered no silks or spices for the European market. If Spanish settlers wanted to maintain their presence in the Caribbean, they would need to find some way of living. So, this talks about the formation of Hispaniola, and it talks about Columbus's plan of forts and trading posts. So basically, like a trading area. but we see how it kind of takes a downturn as it offered no silks or spices, so they needed to find another way to make a living. So maybe we could talk about first here how when Columbus came, he founded the island of Hispaniola. So maybe I could just put here like just, how do I like make it back to the regular bullet point?
Oh,
No.
I would just, sorry. I found a link to it. Sorry
Okay.
about that. I would just do that.
Oh, wait, how'd you do that?
I don't know. Bullet points are too much
Okay.
for me to handle.
Yeah, I know. I don't usually take notes online. So, here we could say, Spanish, say when Columbus, we could just say Columbus and his followers founded Hispaniola. I don't know if I'm spelling that right. And then we could have a smaller bullet point. I don't know how to work this stuff. How do I do the smaller bullet point?
You would just hit enter in the tab.
Oh, okay. Thank you. And then we could say under here, we could say establish Santo Domingo if you wanted to. Establish Santo Domingo. And then we could say he wanted to build forts and, wanted to build forts and trading posts. Build forts and trading posts. And then we could say, however, what was it? However, it became clear that the Caribbean region offered no silks or spices. So, okay. So, however, region offered no silks or spices, so had to find another. You could shorten this down if you wanted to. Maybe you didn't need to have the first bullet point, but I think these two are important, how it didn't have silks or spices, so they had to find another way to make a living. So, yeah. Do you want to do the next paragraph?
The next part, yeah, I'm just going to skip around in this one a little bit because most of this is very specific stuff that we don't necessarily need. But I just want to point out the word encomienda because that is a major, it falls under one of those larger ideas that we talked about earlier. So the encomienda system is huge because it's a coerced labor system. It was largely a form of slavery. So we'll start. Recruitment of labor came through an institution known as the encomienda, in which Spanish settlers and encomenderos, I'm so sorry for saying that wrong, the right to compel Chinos to work in their mines or fields. In return for labor, encomenderos assumed responsibility to look after their workers' health, welfare, and to encourage their conversion to Christianity. And then I'm just going to keep going. The conscription of Taino labor was brutal in business. Encomienderos worked their charges hard and punished them severely when they did not deliver the expected quantities of gold or work sufficiently hard in the fields. So I'm just going to end that one there. And basically, we can just write Encomienda System, coerced labor, harsh punishments, difficult tasks. And at this time, it mainly was the natives who were in them. Okay, let's keep going.
Okay, so here you have smallpox. So again, of course, after the Europeans settled, a big effect was diseases that the natives got. So let's read about smallpox. Serious demographic decline set in only after 1518. So when smallpox reached the Caribbean region and touched off devastating epidemics among the people. To replace laborers lost to disease, encomenderos launched raiding parties to kidnap and enslave the Taino and other peoples. The tactic exposed additional victims to introduced diseases and hastened the decline of indigenous populations. So here, under pressure of the disease, the native population plummeted from about 4 million in 1492 to a few thousand in the 1540s. Native societies themselves passed out. Only few cultural elements survived. I can't canoe, but the society that generated largely disappeared. So this section basically talks about how smallpox just greatly reduced the population. As you see here, it talks about how it plummeted from about 4 million to a few thousand. I think that's the major point of this. I don't know if we necessarily need to write down, like how they launched raiding parties to kidnap and enslave Taino and other people. But I think the main point about smallpox is that it reduced the population. And yeah, so I think I'm probably just going to write that out of this whole thing, because that's the effect that the main effect that smallpox had on the native population. So maybe, I don't know. Forgot how to get the big bullet point again.
Here, I got it.
Wait, how did you do that though?
I hit enter twice.
Oh, okay.
So I like started there.
Oh, okay. So we have smallpox, and then we could just say huge effect on native population as millions of people died. So maybe if we want to just cite the statistic, we could say like from 4 million, what was it, to a few thousand. 4 million to a few. And then I don't know if there's really anything else I want to add to this. I think that's the main thing that I want to add from this, that it just led to the decline of the indigenous population. I don't think I really need to add anything about like the Taino kidnapping. Maybe if I just wanted to, I could write this. Maybe I'll just add this little thing. So maybe I'll just write Encomenderos. I don't know how to spell that. Kidnapped, enslaved, what was it, the Taino people? Tainos and other people. Taino people to replace labors lost from smallpox. I think that's all I'm going to write for this section. So we can continue to the next one.
Okay, so on the version that I'm on, it shows the conquests of Mexico and Peru as being next. But we can talk about mining and plantation and the plantation system. And just looking at this, it seems like the most important part's really going to be that they wanted gold, but over time, sugar became a very large source. I haven't read through yet. Okay, so let's read it. Deposits of gold were thin in the Caribbean, but optimistic Spanish adventurers continued to seek treasure there for a century and more. After the mid-16th century, however, when the Spanish explorers located exceptionally rich sources of silver in Mexico and Peru, the Caribbean became sleepy backwater of the Spanish Empire. English pirates lurked in the Caribbean waters, hoping to intercept imperial fleets carrying American silver to Spain, but the region was not a center of production. Then, about the 1640s, French, English, and Dutch settlers began to flock to the Caribbean with the intention of establishing plantations. It became clear that even if the Caribbean islands lacked precious metals, they offered ideal conditions for the cultivation of cash crops, particularly sugar, which would fetch high prices in European markets. Later, tobacco became a prime cash crop. And then it just says, meanwhile, the indigenous populations were so extinct, planters lacked the labor they needed to operate their estates. So they imported several million slaves. By 1700, Caribbean society consisted of a small class of European administrators and large masses of slaves, I'm guessing that says. Okay, so we're just gonna talk, I'm just gonna set up a new bullet point over here. Oh no. Okay, so we can just talk about the shift. We'll go with metals to cash crops. So basically, what we gathered from that was that they depleted resources. And wait, no, 1640s they flexed the Caribbean. Okay, well, basically they saw that the Caribbean has good growing conditions. So cash crops are produced. And then we also think if we look back, we can connect that the native populations, they decrease. So native population, I can't spell that wrong. Anywho, native population decrease led to, the decrease in the native populations led to a demand for labor. So in exchange for that, they started transporting slaves from Africa. Began. Okay. We can keep going.
Okay. So now we have a new section. So now we go from talking about all of this, the effects of European colonization. So we have another big effect. So here we were talking about like economic, social mainly, but here now we have kind of like a political standpoint from this. So we're going to talk about the conquest of Mexico and Peru. So maybe I might want to start like another thing, and I might just want to put conquest of Mexico, conquest of Mexico and Peru. So Spanish interest soon shifted from the Caribbean to the American mainland, where settlers hoped to find more resources to exploit. During the early 16th century, Spanish conquistadors, conquerors, pressed beyond the Caribbean islands, moving west into Mexico and south into Panama and Peru. Between 1519 and 1521, Hernan, Cortes, and a small band of men brought down the Aztec Empire in Mexico, and between 1532 and 1533, Francisco Pizarro and his followers toppled the Inca Empire in Peru. These conquests laid the foundations for colonial regimes that would transform the Americas. So I don't know if this is a summary of what happened and they're going to explain it later, or they're explaining it all at once here. Let me just see real quick. Yeah, so this is basically just, I guess, summary before we get into the actual information. So maybe here I would pull out the word conquistadors because that's a big vocab word. And yes, again, it just means conquer. So maybe I could just write, we could say, interest shifted from Caribbean to American mainland, where, and then I might want to bold conquistadors, and then I can just put in parentheses conquerors, went into Mexico and Peru. Went to Mexico and Peru. And then we could go into that and talk about how Hernan Cortes brought down the Aztec Empire, and then we could talk about how, and just say Francisco Pizarro toppled the Inca Empire. So we could just say Hernan Cortes toppled the Aztec Empire, and then we might want to just include the date in between. We could just say 1519 to 21, and then we could say Francisco Pizarro toppled the Incan Empire, and then we could do 32? Yeah, 1532 to 33. So that's basically what this paragraph is saying. Do you want to do this paragraph? I think your mic is off because I can't hear you.
Was. Okay. In Mexico and Peru, Spanish explorers found societies quite different from those of the Caribbean islands. Both Mexico and Peru have been sites of agricultural societies, cities, and large states for more than a millennium. In the early 15th century, both lands fell under sway of people of powerful imperial states. The Mexica people and their allies founded the Aztec Empire that expanded to embrace most of Mesoamerica, while the Incas imposed their rule on a vast realm extending from modern Ecuador to the north, in the north to modern Chile in the south. The largest state of South America had ever seen. The Aztec uh, and Inca empires both had clear lines of political authority and had the means to mobilize massive populations, collect taxes or tribute to maintain their societies, and recruit labor for public works. So this is really just the background section about the Aztecs and the Inca. So we can just put that under the same category as the last sort of section of notes. And basically, what I would write is maybe just Incas had a large state in South America, and maybe the Aztecs based in Mesoamerica. Large populations, tribute system. If you guys need to learn about the Aztecs and Incas, I actually have a stream on it from like I think a few weeks ago. It's continuities and change in the South America, and if you have 5 plus, you can view it. It's just a good review for the test. And that's all for this portion, I think.
So next, we have a very important person. So this is Hernan Cortes, and he was basically just responsible for the fall of the Aztec Empire. So let's read about that. So the conquest of Mexico began with an expedition to search for gold on the American mainland. In 1519, Cortes led about 450 soldiers to Mexico and made his way from Veracruz on the Gulf Coast to the island city of Tenochtitlan, the stunningly beautiful Aztec capital situated in Lake Texcoco. They seized the Emperor Moctezuma, who died in 1520 during a skirmish between Spanish forces and residents of Tenochtitlan. Aztec forces soon drove the conquistadors from the capital, and Cuauhtemoc, the nephew and son-in-law of Moctezuma, emerged as the last Aztec empire. Cortes built a small fleet of ships, placed Tenochtitlan under siege, and in 1521 starved the city in surrender. Cuauhtemoc stood up to the torture Cortes inflicted upon him in an attempt to uncover the whereabouts of Aztec golden treasures, but he did not escape the execution ordered by Cortes in 1525. So we have a lot of detail in this paragraph, basically just how the Aztec Empire fell. So we could start basically just by saying Cortes led his in 1519, Cortes led his troops to Tenochtitlan, the Aztec capital. So we could say, so maybe we could start this off by just being like Hernan Cortes, and then we could just say responsible for fall of Aztecs. Then, so we could say in 1519, led his soldiers to Tenochtitlan, capital of Aztec Empire. And then we could say, so this guy's a pretty famous person. He was the emperor. So we could say they sieged the Emperor Moctezuma. So we could just say seized Emperor Moctezuma, I think the second it was. Yeah. And then Aztec forces and Cuauhtemoc, the nephew, emerged as the last Aztec empire. Cortes built a small fleet of ships, placed Tenochtitlan under siege, and in 1501 starved the city in surrender. Stood up to the torture in an attempt to uncover the whereabouts, but he did not escape the execution. Okay, so we could just say that we could just say Cuauhtemoc. I don't know, I've never heard of that guy before. Cuauhtemoc was the last emperor. but in 1521, Cortes starved city into surrender under siege. And then this part just says how he just didn't escape the execution ordered by Cortes in 1525, but I don't think I'm going to write that part down. So yeah, that's just basically how Cortes toppled the Aztec Empire.
Okay, so for the next part, I was gonna just skip to the Pizarro section because a lot of the paragraphs are just being too specific for this portion. Or we could just talk about epidemic disease, which I would love to. Okay. On the mainland, as in the Caribbean, epidemic disease aided Spanish efforts. During the siege of Tenochtitlan, smallpox raged through the city, killing inhabitants by tens of thousands and fatally sapping the strength of defensive forces. Smallpox rapidly spread beyond the capital, raced through Mexico, and carried off so many people that Aztec society was unable to function. Only in the context of this drastic depopulation is it possible to understand the Spanish conquest of Mexico. So basically what we can write there is just disease, smallpox namely. Smallpox devastated native populations, helped Cortes conquer. And that was really all that you need to take away from that, because you don't need to be super specific with a lot of the information.
Mm-hmm. Do you want to do like the first paragraph here too, since yours is kind of short?
Yeah, sure. Okay, so Francisco Pizarro experienced similar results when he led a Spanish expedition from Central America to Peru. Pizarro set out in 1530 with 180 soldiers, later joined by reinforcements to make a force of about 600. The conquistadores arrived in Peru just after a bitter dispute between Huáscar and Atahualpa, two brothers within the Inca ruling house, and Pizarro's forces exploited the differences between these two Inca factions. Already by 1533, they had taken the Inca capital at Cuzco under pretext of holding a conference. They called the Inca ruling elites together, seized them, and killed most of them. They spared the Inca ruler Atahualpa until he had delivered a large quantity of gold to Pizarro. Then they strangled him and decapitated his body. The search for treasure continued after the end of Inca rule. Pizarro and his conquistadores looted gold and silver plaques from Cusco's temples and public buildings, melted down statuettes fashioned from precious metals, even filched jewelry and ornaments from the embalmed bodies of deceased Inca rulers. And Eric Beckman said, "That's intense," and I would have to agree. So for this portion, I'm just going to start a new section on Francisco Pizarro. I can type, I promise. So basically, most important thing, obviously, he helped conquer the Incas. And the beauty of AP World History is that years are important, but they're not that important. So we don't have to write that down. And then next thing, can we go back to the screen with thanks. He conquered the Incas, and basically he just exploited us family struggles in the empire to help with between Atahualpa and his brother. And then they also killed major governing peoples, and that resulted in a breakdown of what's it called? Of like the administrative structure. And we could just say brutally the Spanish brutally maimed the empire as a whole. Oh, and the last part, I forgot about this almost, was gold. So if you recall, he asked for the room full of gold. Now that's really important because it shows the motivations of the Spaniards. They want the gold. They're all about the money. A lot of times they said they were doing it under pretenses of religion, but oftentimes it was really mostly gold. You have the 3 Gs, God, gold, and glory. The reasons for colonization. And for here, you're mostly seeing gold. Okay, we can keep going.
So here, several considerations helped explain how Pizarro's tiny force was able to topple the Inca Empire. Many subjects of the empire despised the Incas as overlords and tax collectors and put up little resistance to Pizarro's forces. Indeed, many allied with the Spanish invaders. Epidemic disease also encouraged resistance. Smallpox had spread from Mexico and Central America to Peru in the 1520s, long before Pizarro's arrival, and had already taken a heavy toll among Andean populations. Pizarro and his army actually faced more threats from fresh Spanish interlopers than from native peoples. The conquest of Peru took longer than the conquest of Mexico, but by 1540, Spanish forces had established themselves securely as lords of the land. So basically, this paragraph here just talks about how Pizarro was able to do it. So maybe I could just say many subjects despised the Incas, so they allied with the Spanish instead. So I'm gonna keep that under here and just say many subjects of the Inca despised them, so they decided to ally with the Spanish. And then we could just say epidemic disease also encouraged resistance. We could just say again, we have this reoccurring theme of smallpox and like diseases. So we could just say epidemic diseases, and then we could put like smallpox, I guess. Smallpox encouraged resistance. And then let's just see, do you have to write anything here? Face more threats. We could just say, maybe we could just say face more threats from fresh Spanish interlopers than from natives. So face less threats from natives and more from Spanish. You know what an interloper is? Because I don't know what that is.
So an interloper is basically just someone who tries to become involved in something that they're not supposed to be involved in.
Okay.
Someone, they got their nose in someone else's business. So I think this is probably a good place to stop.
Yeah.
We're just about at the hour marker. So we could probably open up like a quick Q&A. So if you have any questions from your classes, drop them in the chat. We can help you out. We also have the intercom system on the front page of the Fiveable website. So if you ever have questions, you can just text them into us.
So just drop any questions that you have below about maybe taking notes or just anything about the class in general, strategies, all of that. I don't think anyone's going to ask anything.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thanks for coming, everyone. I hope we all learned something.
I was just answering intercom.
Oh, great. Okay.
Yes. And be sure to check out the streams that are occurring in the next couple of days. We have the DBQ again, and then we have the SAQ review with Eric. So be sure to check all of those out.
Yeah. Okay. Bye, everyone.
So bye, everyone. Hope you enjoyed
Thanks for coming.
and learned some.